Hi, I'm Shelby Williams with Plano City Council. Tonight we had a few items, but we also had a visit by Alex Stein. So here's my take. I think the very best thing I have seen Stein do was his previous visit, where he actually laid out some historically accurate information about Wernher von Braun and the U.S. military's importation of German rocket scientist for our missile program. He was an actual Nazi rocket scientist. Tonight, Stein came with dyed hair, with a ball gag in his mouth, and had his phone reciting, some AI recitation of what he had pre-scripted, of course. And he was just holding it up to the mic. And, he was claiming that he had gonorrhea of the throat or something, based on his trip to the border to aid in sex trafficking. So that was all in just the first few seconds. So where I thought he was going with it was to use his unique attention-getting skills to shine a light on the real problem of sex trafficking at our border. But then it ended there. He left it there, and he just went on to gratuitously say, via his AI on his phone, some very inappropriate things. And it just went off into tripe. And after enough inappropriate comments from his phone, the video was cut off, and that appeared to be what he was really after all along, is the video. But then, long story short, he was escorted from the building, not bodily. He wasn't manhandled or anything, but he was taken out. So here's what I've said before. If Stein and others like him showed up once in a blue moon, and I don't think anybody would care, but keep it appropriate. I have seen, and there were children at the beginning of the meeting. They happened to leave just before Stein got up and started saying these things. So I have seen some of the things Alex Stein has done where he shines a real light on the real problem of inappropriate conduct in front of kids, like kids at drag shows. Don't do that yourself, okay? Be really circuitous if you're going to make such references in a public forum like that. Don't be part and parcel to the thing that you're decrying. So anyway, it was really inappropriate stuff. It was gratuitous. There was no educational value to it, and he was escorted from the council chambers, which, by all accounts, by everything I could tell, is what he was after to begin with. So then we got on with our actual meeting. The very first thing we had in preliminary open meeting was direction regarding land bank policy. So we're going to set aside some of our economic development fund for purchasing land that we put to strategic use as a city. In the regular meeting, the Plano Fire Rescue won the Battle of the Badges blood drive. So the blood drive occurs during the summer, which is a lull for schools during summer vacation. Schools are usually where the most blood is raised during the school year. So police and fire step in the summer months, and they have the Battle of the Badges blood drive. So hats off and needles out for a Plano Fire Rescue. We approved the Downtown Plano PID Public Improvement District Assessment Plan. So in a public improvement district, there's an extra assessment on property taxes for properties within that very small district. And the money from that goes to basically improve the district. So for downtown Plano, it's meant to promote downtown Plano and provide some things to attract more people to the downtown Plano area. Of course, a lot of small businesses down there. The two biggest items on tonight's agenda actually were tabled. They have requests to table in advance. One of them was the proposed redevelopment of the EDS campus. Tabled, not really much more to discuss. That'll be coming back. We did pass a specific use permit, an SUP, for vehicle storage for a proposed new car dealership. That's off of Premier Drive, so the The vehicle storage is actually going to be for inventory parking. It's a cross premier from the car dealership. That passed 8-0. We passed an ordinance for determining non-conforming use of properties. That means if a property is put to a use that doesn't conform to the underlying zoning. So we don't have a process for that now. We implemented the process with an appeals process. Then we had a public hearing on the proposed budget. Then we also accepted the certified appraisal rolls for Collin and Denton County. That's just after the Central Appraisal District did their thing and determined how much actual property there is in the county, in each respective county. Collin and Denton, a sliver of Plano is in Denton County. Then we accepted those certified appraisal rolls. That's the basis for which we're going to set the tax rate, and the other taxing entities as well. Plano ISD is going to do the same thing. Collin College is going to do the same thing, and Collin County and Denton counties are going to do the same thing. They're going to assess their own tax rates on that certified appraisal amounts. And then we had a more robust discussion about the tax rate. So the original city manager's proposed budget last meeting was 41.67 cents. This would represent an increase of almost 4%, of around 4% from the prior year. Now, as I've said, throughout this year, while we have adopted the no new revenue rate, which means in aggregate, we just kept property taxes flat for the past 4 years in a row, I don't necessarily champion doing that again this year. Reason being is the only way for a city to combat inflation is to either, while adopting the no new revenue rate, is to either add sufficient new properties to the tax rolls in order to offset inflation, or to cut costs enough to offset inflation, or some combination of the two. Now, I've heard loud and clear that people in Plano don't want a ton more property built in Plano to tax, and so we can only sustain the no new revenue rate for so long. If the new property added to the rolls, or improved property, is added a little bit every year, and inflation is a little bit every year, then we don't have a problem. Inflation has not been just a little bit the past couple of years. I'm sure you have felt that. So with 4 years in a row of adopting the no new revenue rate, we were looking at the voter approval rate this year, which is 3.5% increase of 40.60 cents. That's the voter approval rate. The no new revenue rate, if we did do that, would be 38.65 cents per $100 of valuation. So there is a provision in Senate Bill 2, passed in 2019, took effect for the 2020-2021 budget year, that we can bank anything up to the 3.5% voter approval rate if we do not actually have the voter approval rate as a tax increase every year. And of course we haven't. The no new revenue rate means, as the name implies, no new revenue on properties taxed in both years. We just kept property taxes flat on those properties. So what it allows us to do is take the excess of what the increase in the tax rate would have been, and then bank that up to 3 years out. We can't save it for like 10 or 20 years and then give you a great big whopping tax increase all at once. If we don't use any of the increment that we have built up by not taxing you up to the voter approval rate, then we can carry that forward no more than 3 years. So there was discussion tonight about potentially doing just that. If you have not heard me say it previously, if we exceeded the voter approval rate, then there would be an automatic November election for you to decide whether you wanted us to exceed the no new revenue rate. I'm sorry, the voter approval rate, not the no new revenue rate. but that calculation is meant to include anything we have banked, the increment that we could have carried forward. So long story short, which I probably should have done at the beginning, but anyway, long story last long, the vote tonight was required because we have to publish a proposed tax rate. That tax rate cannot go up from what we published, but it can go down. So for the past 4 years in a row, or at least 3 years in a row, we have published the voter approval rate, but have actually passed the no new revenue rate, the lower no new revenue rate. Tonight, however, we exceeded the, I guess you could say, the statutory no new revenue rate, but we passed a modified increased rate, including some of the increment, but not all. If we had included all of the increment, it would have come in at 43.55 cents per $100 evaluation, but we actually posted, it was not a unanimous vote, by the way, we determined to publish the original proposed rate of 41.67 cents, which is lower than we could, but it's still higher than the voter approval rate of 40.6 cents. So again, this does not mean that's going to be the tax rate. That's just what we agreed to publish. We can still lower the tax rate from that when we actually adopt it, pardon me, next month, but we cannot adopt a tax rate that is higher than that. So then we moved on to a review of the community investment program. This is where some of our major infrastructure expenditures are programmed outside of our normal general fund budget and the normal operations and maintenance expenditures. So $339.8 million is proposed for the CIP, Community Investment Program. This is, by the way, in large part funded by bonds. So in 2021, an historically large bond package was passed, which is where a lot of this money is coming from. So to give you an idea, almost a third of that, $104.4 million, just for streets, which is needed. And lastly, the big item that was tabled was the proposed short-term rental registration ordinance, tabled. So nothing to discuss there either. With that, I will leave you this evening, which you won't be watching this evening, so it's kind of weird because it's probably going to be morning or maybe early afternoon when you're watching, and I'm still saying good evening, so maybe that's going to throw off your circadian rhythm, but I'm still going to bid you good evening. I'm Shelby Williams with Plano City Council. Thank you and God bless.